to memorize. Welcome to the Fervent Four. Did you know that only 4% of businesses ever cross the annual $1 million revenue mark? Hello, I'm Zack Miller, author of Anomaly. With me today, my co-host Tim Ryan, lead man at StartWheel.org. Thank you so much for joining us. The Fervent Four is a weekly show each and every Thursday at 11 a.m. dedicated to sharing insights into growing a world-class business, no matter the climate. We are delighted to be joined by Reverend Cory Newell today. Cory, what's happening?
Hey, how are you guys? Thanks for having me on the show. A lot of people are getting married and there's a lot of bugs in the world. A lot of people are dying. So it's just a busy time to be a pastor.
There you go. Okay, so I said memorization or something like that, memorize, something like that to start. I have recited the intro for this show probably 80 times now. You would think that someone like me, who has said that thing over and over and over again, would be able to do it by memory. I can't. You know, it's like 7 years ago. You know how like back in like third grade we had to memorize what is that was the Jefferson something address, whatever it was. But like, how much of what you do you have memorized, like legit memorized, can just start reciting off, and how much of it do you actually have to like legit read, so that you don't screw something up?
Well, so if we're talking weddings, I have about 6 or 7 different things in my head that just kind of flow. So, for example, I could be reading something from, I'll give love advice from like superheroes. And I quote the line from the superhero, and then I remember something from one of my other kind of things that I'd say or teach, and then I'll pull it into that. It just kind of almost use the same kind of outline. But it's interesting you say that, because I didn't realize how much. Sometimes I'm so much in my head that I could be in front of 500-600 people and completely lost, but saying everything perfectly because I've got everything so well done in my mind. But the other part too,
but it's like the Star Spangled Banner, I guess, or the Pledge of Allegiance, where things that a lot of us haven't said in a really long time, and yet, you know, well, you guys do that at probably a Rotary event every time where you guys say something like that. But like, there's times where like you see it and you're like, how do I remember this? Like, I haven't sang this in 10, 12 years.
Well, yeah, I guess one of the things though that you do, Cory, correct me if I'm wrong, are most of your wedding ceremonies are pretty unique in the sense of there might be some traditional cookie cutter things that are said, but don't you make every experience pretty unique and customize what is said with each wedding?
I do. I like to say that every wedding is custom. And so I take the story of couples and I formulate it and throughout the entire time that I'm talking. I've been a pastor for 20 years, so a lot of the things that I've learned or have taught on it does stay in my brain. I'll be, I don't know, I'm a chaplain too at a hospital, but I'll be sitting with a patient talking about something, whatever they're dealing with. And this thing that come up from like 4th grade in Awanas, a Bible verse I had memorized, just comes out of nowhere. I'm just like, I haven't said that since the 4th grade in Awanas. Okay, I like it. But then there's also in my tradition the power and leading of all the holy things, so that guides us too.
Do you? How long ago was the very first wedding that you performed?
My first wedding was in 2008. It was in a field at a friend's house. They had a backwoods. And I remember this wedding specifically because they asked me, they were close friends of mine, and I was terrified. They don't teach you how to do ceremonies or weddings or funerals or baptisms in seminary. But my phone was in my back pocket, and I told everyone to turn their phone off, and mine wasn't off. And there was this like jam kind of music, because that was my ringtone at the time. And I turned around literally to the woods to look to see whose phone was on, and it was mine. My face comes back and I'm mouthing, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." So it was right at the vows too. It was perfect timing.
Were you sorry because the music that was playing or that your phone went off?
All of it. It was totally embarrassing.
So Tim and I would probably say this is a business show, so we talk about business. I don't think people always, the first thing that people probably come to mind is, you know, a wedding ceremony being a business, but you have become the number one, the greatest, the GOAT of wedding ceremony ordainers, whatever the exact. I ordained my sister's wedding like 5 years ago. I was also nervous during that, probably because I was going to tell some ridiculous story there. But the business of weddings is interesting. It's in my opinion, and probably every father's out there, the most expensive day of their lives, which is absurd. I just think about how much money people spend on those things. But from you said you were scared to death of doing that first wedding and getting over that. Like, what did you do to process that, to get through it? Because now you've done thousands. I don't know if you have the exact number. Actually, what would be interesting is what's more, your amount of weddings that you've hosted, done the ceremonies for, or Tim's run streak. I wonder which one's higher.
I don't know. I stopped counting weddings around 6,000. So
okay, well, well, Tim, you got a long way to go. But how do you get over that? Because people are terrified of public speaking. This is a very intimate and important day for people. How do you kind of push through?
I think my first year was terrifying. Like, I've purposely never been a platform type number one speaker for my church work. It's always been a secondary or back behind the stage. But when I was thrusted in the most important day of most of these people's lives, it's just, I mean, my heart beat every single time. And every now and then it still kind of gets me. I drink a Diet Coke before every service, just to bring my energy up a little bit. But you know, it's something I had to work through. I had to process my own feelings and then, you know, put those feelings to the side in my peripheral. So those feelings never leave. It's just, instead of being right here and terrified, it's just back here and a little bit, you know, and then I can work through and focus. But my goal in life is to make sure that this couple's love story is shared and that they have the best day ever. That's the whole point. And that literally I can show up within a minute and do my thing. But, you know, a professional live person, if you will, in the gig world, they are able, they're able to do things like that. And a professional chaplain, you know, we're trained decades and hours and all that to be able to do all the things that we do. So
did you know the day, like when it started getting easier, or that emotion, that feeling wasn't there the same way? I mean, was it the Diet Coke moment? Is that you started doing that? Like, were you able to personally, or like, could you recognize like internally, like, hey, like it's not as bad as it used to be, type of thing?
I think when people started booking me, like, so when I started, I didn't start as a business. It was just with friends and doing it for friends. And then when I did it for that friend, 2 or 3 other friends kind of asked. And then eventually I mean, this business model kind of popped up. And so when I started charging people money, that's when I started getting really focused and harnessing the energy and where I would put all of my energy. And that really helped me focus, because someone's spending, I mean, I'm not the cheapest guy. I'm probably the most expensive officiant in the state of Virginia. And I value that. And I want to make sure that I present a quality product. And if you ask what my product is, it's this couple's story and my presentation of that story, in addition to the Holy Sacrament. But that's what I present. So it's an interesting way to do that. But I put my pastor pants on and said, you know, these people are going to pay me some money, and I have no elders or deacons to deal with. So this is going to be a great day. I'm my own worst enemy.
How much preparation goes into each ceremony?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I spend about 3 hours with every booking. So I have an hour planning session with the couple where I learn all the great nooks, crannies, and embarrassing parts of the stories. And then I write the ceremony, and then I present the ceremony. So all that takes about 3 hours. There's some drive time. It just depends, but I often have a driver and assistant with me taking care of that, so I can do even more work on the road.
It's interesting that you say that, because Tim and I have seen a billion different performers over the years. Some of them we pay for, you know, obviously like real performances, and then some of them are business related where, you know, people just pitch their business and stuff like that. I would be willing to bet that 95% of those people don't spend the amount of time that you spent with this couple on their actual pitch beforehand, right? So that 3 hours that you're saying for that performance, they don't even give it that. So it's interesting that, you know, this is your living. This is how you know, this is what you do to put bread on the table, if you will, and you put 3 hours into each one, when these people who expect that their pitch is going to perform well enough to provide them the value that they want back, and they're not even willing to put in the 3 hours. So it's interesting that that's what you're doing there.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that my product isn't me. My product is the couple's love story. And I think once I realized that I'm not that important, I might have a great presentation model or style or personality that people like, but the couple's story is the real product, with my ability to add the holy sacrament to their marriage ceremony. And so it's important to recognize that, and to see that I might be the guy in center stage, but center stage also with me is my couple, and that's the product, is the couple.
Interesting. What's the highest number of ceremonies that you've done? You do multiple over the course of a weekend.
I think one weekend I did 15 ceremonies. I didn't talk for about 2 days after that, but and by the time my last kind of like 3 or 4, my voice was so scratchy that I mean, all I wanted was ice cream and nothing. I didn't want to be, and surprisingly, secretly, I'm an introvert. I'm a learned extrovert so that I can function in society, because that's what I do for a living, is to be with people. But I just shut my door, my office. I have French doors, and I just go away, put on some music, and read, and just find myself again, and eat a lot of ice cream.
I mean, I'd like some ice cream right now, as you mentioned that. I mean, what's your favorite kind of ice cream? I don't know why I asked this question way more than I should have.
No, it's a very important part of my life. It's Bluebell brand only. I will not eat anything else. I like cookies and cream is my favorite, but I almost like every more organic product that Bluebell will produce. So not the extra artificial stuff that they add, but.
Well, I just happen to have to go to the grocery store today, so guess what? I'm gonna get some cookies and cream, Bluebell special.
It is the best. They sell them by the pint, and they also do they do individual little cups. So I'm watching my weight. So sometimes, you just want something sweet on your tongue and just to cool your throat off. So that little cup is a perfect amount.
I'm not sure that that's going to be enough. I'll go with the pint.
No, one thing that I find fascinating is the fact, and Zack, you touched on it in the sense of, this is a business in the sense of, in every sense of it. So over the course of, what you said, 2012, 2008 was your first ceremony. So, ever since that time, and you stopped counting at 6,000. So, I mean,
So my count really started in 2014, because I was working for the church in 2008. So privately, I went from doing work for the church and weddings and sacraments there to doing my own business model in 2014. So privately, I've done over 6,000 weddings.
And now you're the number one in the state. I mean, grind is not the right word, but I mean, this is just something that didn't happen overnight, that you just continue on your journey, and then you're in the position that you're in now. Whereas so many people in business, when they want to start their business, they just run out of energy, and then they throw in the towel, and then they go after something different. But I mean, you are a true test and a true example of, you got to put in the work, and if you put in the work, then you're going to see the fruits of your labor, which you have.
Yeah, I definitely call it a hustle. I'm tired, and even with the 3 hours that I spend with building and meeting and with each client, there's still probably another 2 hours of post work that I do with each. So the reviews and the contact, and then the follow up, any counseling care that is offered to. I mean, if you look in a what an entrepreneurial ministry business model that I curated myself, because it doesn't exist. My upsell is counseling. My upsell is pastoral care, baby blessings, house dedications. So I don't leave the couple at you're married, I follow them often through the life cycles, and even done a few of my couple's funeral ceremonies too later in life. So it's interesting to see the life of what a pastor would do with a family, and to do that privately through a business model, and be able to maintain both my integrity, my ministry, and my business all the way through the end. And it was something that I had to figure out and bite into, because like when I'm working for the church, I don't ask for a payment to do a blessing for your baby. That's part of my role in the church, but I don't have a paycheck from the church anymore. I have a paycheck from the person that's asked me to do that care. But spirituality is something that's important to people. It's just that they get lost, I think, in organized religion or some sort of hurt or trauma that's happened to them, or just life has been so busy that they can't get plugged into a place where some sort of spiritual influence can impact them. So working with someone like me is a way that they can maintain that need, that inherent human need, and to have the spiritual components that they desire.
And part of that, you had to identify your market segment that you wanted to go after. I mean, and again, this is not diminishing the role that you play, but I mean, everyone has a market segment, and your market segment is for the unchurched. And you run into people all the time that are just like, hey, you know, I'm not necessarily, I mean, I'm not a churchgoer every single Sunday, but I want to get married. You know, who do I turn to? You know, and that's your market segment. So
yeah, it's interesting because if you ask any pastor at a Sunday morning service who their prime target is, it's the unchurched or underchurched. And I've been in the mega church world for 15 years, most of my 20s and early 30s, and as much as I wanted to target the unchurched, we just weren't. We were just targeting or reaching churched or angry churched that moved around to find another church. And this has given me so much purpose in my business model, because I think purpose is important for whatever business that you're doing. But it's given me so much purpose because I'm finally able to make a living, to do and walk in my calling, and to focus on a group that I have been committed to and called to my entire life. So, and I'm finally doing it in a way where I have zero issues with deacons and committees or the things that organized religion people suffer through. And I make a decent living. I mean, my business surprisingly would surprise you how much money that I make with my work. So, and I never want to go back to the church. I hope that's okay to say.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna do 15 ceremonies over the course of the weekend, I mean that definitely is a hustle, and good for you to does it slow down in the winter months, or you just seem to me as someone that the hustle doesn't ever end. You may not do 15 every single weekend, but marriage is something that is going to continue to happen.
Yeah. So the bigger weddings slow down in the fall. I'm sorry, late fall, early winter. But the elopements are still happening. Someone called. I mean, it's surprising. My phone will just ring off the hook because I do everything through my cell phone. But people will call all the time. Can I get married right now? Can I get married today? There's only 2 localities that have a justice of the peace in their courthouse. Everybody else doesn't, and they require, the way that Virginia sorts, they require an officiant to do all the work. Whoever wrote the laws were obviously making money as an officiant because it works out in our favor. Other states are a lot easier to do that, but Virginia is set up to make a lot of money in this work. So, and it also speaks to my competitors, because when I first started in 2014, there were 37 officiants doing this type of work, and now I think there's 217. And a lot of them just take my website, cut it in half, and do it. They say emulation is the best compliment, so I'm good with that.
I can't remember the exact term that you use, but let's just say that you're the leading officiant in the state of Virginia. You're the number one. When did you start positioning yourself like that? How did you determine that it was a credible enough statement? And I mean, do you still kind of wrestle with it? Because I feel like a lot of people are not selfish enough in their business to promote themselves to what their customers believe they are. And I'm just, you hear people win all these awards. You hear people doing great stuff from word of mouth in general, yet they never promote it themselves or position themselves to take advantage off of that. Is that something that you've done? Well, just tell the whole story on that, I guess. Yeah.
I would say from the beginning, taking confidence in my work. And when I sit with younger people who are just starting out in their business, it's, I can think of a videographer that I'm working with now. He's like, I don't want to charge that much. I'm not that good. I'm like, no, you are that good. And you should have confidence in the product that you're doing, because if you don't have confidence, who else will? I think when I first started my business, the focus was the couple and doing, God's work. But eventually, like, my price point was so low. I remember I had officiants come and beg me to go up in cost. And I was like, no, I'm doing the Lord's work. I'm going to only charge this dollar amount. And then after a while, I started, I think I was paying the couple to show up at some of their weddings. So I realized quickly that I needed to change. But
what kind of pricing are we talking about in that case? Like what?
When I first started, my fees were $85 a wedding.
And what are they now?
They average around $500 to $1,000 a wedding.
Got it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's still low cost, but I like to say that, I'm the cheapest thing that is at a wedding, but the most, only reason that anyone needs to be there. So, and if all these people can charge thousands of dollars, I can charge my $500. And, my line is that, we can start the party at hello, and now that I do.
So it's interesting. You said other officiants were telling you to charge more, probably because people were going to you because you were the cheaper one, right?
Yeah.
And so they wanted that rate to go up. But now you're explaining to people that it sounds like mentor and coach in different businesses, like, yo, you are good at this. You need to see your value. I think most people undervalue themselves, and they're like, "Yo, I would never pay for that." And it's like, well, just because you weren't, you're not the customer. That person will, and their interest, like it. It's cool to hear that. It sounds like it's come full circle on that.
Yeah, I very quickly changed my price point from $85, from being the cheapest guy in town to being the most expensive. Eventually, I started listing myself as Hampton Roads #1 wedding pastor. Only because I was. And I think it's okay to speak and walk into the calling or the blessing that you have been given to do the things that if you're good at what you do, then be good at what you do and talk about it, because no one else is going to talk about it. But the awards came and the numbers came, and I remember though, what really helped me was meeting a platform speaker at a national wedding conference. She was the nation's #1 or whatever. I don't know. That's how they staged her. And so she said that she did 336 weddings in 1 year. And I said, oh, I did that my first year. And I was in year 2 at that point. And so my goal in life was to come back to the conference the next year and do 500 weddings. And I did. Well, I got 492 weddings that year, but I came back to her.
Close.
She didn't believe. She was like, I don't think I'm curious how many weddings you did. And I told her. She's like, oh, well, how many did you do, lady? And she's like, I did 396. I'm like, oh, okay. So, and we're friends to this day now. We cohort with each other. She's up in DC. I'm down here. I send her stuff. She sends me stuff, and we'll bounce some things off with each other. And it's a lot of fun, but we respect each other, and we're good at what we do, and we talk about it. And I think that's the most important piece. Eventually, awards came, and my numbers were so high with weddings. So like 600 plus weddings. I think I averaged around 692 or something like that. People don't want to know that number. They already feel bad or about their own numbers, and I don't want them to do that. But I think I got an award in 2018, 17 that said I was the #2 wedding vendor out of all the industries. And I'm just like, all right, well, I own it. I'm the #2 wedding vendor in all industries. I got you all these, so let's go. But the other part is, it's not just talking about and walking in the confidence that you're good at what you do. You actually have to be good at what you do. And the people that are around me believe that and they prefer that, and they want me to be at their venue, talking about their venue, eating their food, looking at their makeup, looking at their ice art or their whatever the art is, or the creativity, design work that they're doing. They want me to see it, talk about it, because they like working with me, and they like me talking about it too, because people pay attention.
When do you get pitched into to be the officiant? Like, are they coming to you pretty early on? Is it is someone else? Is the wedding planner coming to you? Like, what's the biggest percentage of your leads coming from?
Google, The Knot, Wedding Wire, and word of mouth. Word of mouth is actually #2. Google's #1, and then the wedding websites are 3 and 4. I'm in all phases of introduction. So sometimes it's I'm the very first thing that's booked. Sometimes I'm the very last thing that booked. There's one young lady, she had, I don't know, spent $70,000 on her wedding, and she didn't have an officiant booked. So a week before her wedding, she calls me and she's like, "Are you available?" I'm like, "I'm not, but I have 3 people who work for me, and one of them are. So let's just get the contract signed and get someone there." So we did everything that we needed to do, and she got booked and taken care of, and she had a fantastic wedding 6 days later. So.
With that, do you interview when you have that initial meeting? Are you interviewing them to see if they're a right fit, one for you as from a business standpoint, and then also from a wedding? Are you wedding material standpoint?
Yes, that's a very good point. I interview every single inquiry. I get 300 or 400 inquiries a month, and 100% of them are do it. But I have these systems in place that I've curated and designed and have meticulously developed so that I can make sure that it is. But one of the first things is, after we even have a fantastic conversation, you might have told me 100% of the details, I'm going to require you to do a questionnaire. And the questionnaire just makes you sit down and put all of it in writing, because I don't like to guess or to wonder or to remember, because I just don't have the bandwidth to do all of that. And if they don't want to do my inquiry questionnaire, I don't want to work with you. If you answer one-word answers, I don't want to work with you. I don't have time to babysit. I don't have time to hold your hand. I'm not your wedding planner. I'm your pastor. We can set up a counseling session. That's another service line. But this is my process. And if you want to stick with me, I'll stick with you. But you got to follow it this way.
I wonder if Tim knows where I'm going with this. So to be on the show, we have a questionnaire as well, just like you do, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a guide for us to look at. It's also something from a show notes perspective. So we have the exact links that you want to do. Sometimes we don't know the people, right? So you and Tim know each other better than I know you, right? So he can lead more questions in that because he knows that. But if I want to be informed enough, but how many people aren't willing to, spend, 3 minutes to fill out a form that they should already know and should just be a copy and paste job anyway. But it's like, if you're not willing to do this thing, just like you said, I'm not willing to work with you. We're not willing to have you on the show if you're not willing to, give us a little bit. And it's not hard. But I'm not surprised too why, people are just lazy. And it's like, whatever. Like, it ain't hard.
Yeah.
And it's interesting in the sense of, you're 692. I mean, if you took everybody, who knows? It could be 1,800, it could be 1,900 people. But, and again, this is another really important aspect of business, is knowing your market, knowing who your clients should be, and not everyone is necessarily going to be your customer. That's
right.
Do you try to make money off of those people who suck at filling out those forms? Do you give them to your competitors? You just let them high and dry. Got it.
I just let them go. So, because At the end of the day, I have to show up to this wedding, and if they're this disorganized, just imagine my schedule with 5 or 6 weddings in a day. If they're not going to start at a 3 o'clock prompt, for example, I've got a 4:15 or 4:30 already booked, and I'm leaving. I'm going to sign the documents, and I'm going to leave. I've only done that once. They were 3 hours behind though, so it was okay to leave on that one. But the point is that my schedule is so tight. That's how I'm going to run my life, run my business. And if I can 9 times out of 10 anticipate if you are fudging or delaying or not wanting or giving me sass, if you will, when I show up, all of that is presented on their day, and it's just their family, their personality. It exudes them. That's just who they are as humans, and that's fine. I just don't want that in my business because I don't have time for it.
Have you gone back to look at some of the earlier ceremonies that you have done, just from a growth standpoint, to see how far you have matured and improved your game, so to speak?
Yeah, I went back to, like, so when I first started, I used a script from my church liturgy book, and I cringe at some of the things that I said in those days. But I think it was like maybe a month or 2 into my business, I met a DJ of all businesses, but a DJ came up to me and she said, "Pastor Cory, you have the opportunity to for a gold mine to share a love story that not many people will ever get to hear in a way that will impact so the couple, but everyone that's gives reason to celebrate." And so when I had this like lightning bulb moment from this DJ, it completely reconstructed everything that I would do from that point forward. And so I get to a place where this love story becomes the sacrament, because that's what God is blessing is everything that happened in that whole dialogue and that whole transition and the sacredness and holiness and all of that together, and then sharing and how that dance happened is beautiful to me. It's an art. And so I think that DJ, every single time I see her, I'm just like, you changed my life. You changed the couple's lives. You changed people's who experience weddings, because my weddings aren't a normal experience. It's quite the experience. But that's the whole point, is that this isn't just a normal day. And there's reason that all you people are staring at the 3 of us right now. And it's just giving purpose to all of it.
Is there an outfit, a uniform? Is there a thing that, like, is that part of the questionnaire? Like, where does what you wear come into this?
So I do ask parts of the questionnaire about colors and what the group, who the person that's. I ask what the people are wearing. So I say people because I marry all couples, same-sex couples too, and not everything is always the same for every group of people. But yeah, so colors are important to me. I don't wear a stole. I don't wear a robe. If you want me to wear that, I would charge you extra just because it's uncomfortable, hot and heavy, and I'm not that guy. But I usually just match suits and colors and ties, and usually you pay me a lot of money, so I look like a lot of money when I'm standing with all of you. There's been a few times though when I guess maybe we book fast or we didn't ask. So like an African American culture often, well, then a lot of them have had color schemes, and the whole guest know about the color scheme. So everyone dresses red and white or black and red or whatever. And so I've showed up where I've not known the colors, and I was like plaid and blue to a red and black wedding, and I had never. I'm already the white guy in the room. I'm just like, I'm never ever going to be different. The other difference.
Way to go, Cory! All you had to wear plaid. Come on, man.
I like to have a lot of color, but and one of the colors would be one of their color. Anyway, it was not good. So I've had a few embarrassing moments. Another one is black tie weddings. So if I come in like a blue suit for a black tie wedding, that's just completely inappropriate. And I don't want to look bad. My goal in life is to never look bad or make the couple look bad, and that's why we have 3 hours of time together. So
I don't I always clash. So, I mean, I don't even know what matches and what doesn't. So
when
I
you're Zack
wouldn't know.
Miller, you could do whatever Zack Miller wants.
There you
you're
go.
at a level there, sir.
Oh, well, it's partially just because I'm colorblind and I am pattern blind, and I just don't understand any of it.
Cory, you touched on same-sex marriage. What was it experiencing going through that, and with marital equality? Did you get a lot of pushback from traditionalists? You know, and at the same time, I'm sure that it was a very warm welcome from the other side, so to speak. Walk us through that transition.
Yeah, so it was October of 2014 or 15 where the Supreme Court gave the Fourth Circuit Court gave the stay, and said that marriage equality will prevail in the land. And so I had to choose. My denomination at the time did not accept same-sex marriage. And secretly at the time, I was a non-out. I'm a gay pastor, but I was not out at that time. And so I had to decide then, am I going to put my feet in the sand and support my community that I've been hiding from or through, or was I going to go forward? So as a closeted gay pastor, I said, I'm going to support same-sex marriage. And there was a massive public media response, and I'm considered evangelical, so I was an evangelical that supported same-sex marriage. I was websites and newspapers and broadcast media covered that, and that caused a storm of storms that I never would have thought would have happened. I mean, I remember having death threats. My family owns an exterminating company that I manage, and people ended contracts with us because of that. Other title agencies or whatever said, we're not going to send your family's business anything. And I mean, all this stuff that's happened. Oh, it was sad. I remember some churches, some mega churches, some people sent me links to the thing, said, listen to 26:34. So 26 minutes and 34 seconds. And they either mention my name or mention my media presence, where they talked about an evangelical supporting same-sex marriage and calling me all the things in the book about how bad I was. But the other part of it is the love stories of these couples who have spent years. I remember my very first same-sex marriage. The couple had been together for 40 years. They were in their 70s. And so, I mean, they lived through Stonewall. They lived through the cops literally pinpointing them and beating them and things like that. So they're walking down the aisle and they're meeting each other. And this first time that they can legally be pronounced married for in all their land, because in gay relationships, legalities don't really mean anything, because we were never able to get legally married up until a few years ago. So we've always found our own ways to come up with our own language to be together like that. But the energy and the tears, the eyes full of water, meeting together because you could see all 37, 40 years that they've been together in that moment, walking down the aisle, come to fruition. My heart broke. And it still breaks every single time, because same-sex marriage was and is still so stigmatized. My own wedding in 2019, that's when I came out publicly, was in 2019. My family didn't even come. So, that's a real part of who we are and how we are as a culture and a land in the southeast Virginia. Surprisingly, though, same-sex couples have asked for God to be mentioned. They want prayer. They want the spiritual component. Some of them aren't. They don't want any mention of God or prayer, and I give them that option. But despite how much the church and society has stained them, they still seek the things that all of us seek: a love of their life, a person to witness their story for the rest of time, and a God who loves them no matter what.
Wow. I mean, that's tough to follow up with. But I mean, the thing that stands out with me is just the storytelling. I mean, it's just a powerful story. And you even mentioned this storytelling aspect is really just such an important part. It's an art. Yeah, how did you learn to develop and master the storytelling aspects of what you do? I mean, it's critical, especially from a business owner and from your profession.
I think for me it is getting past on my business mind stuff and seeing the human. Like when I ask about your first date, for example, I want to know what you were feeling. I want to know the moment that you first laid eyes on each other, what was happening inside of your mind. I mean, part of my training is psychotherapy. I'm a pastoral psychotherapist in my chaplain world, and so I'm able to watch facial expressions and to I might see a little twitch. I'm like, tell me about that twitch. Or, you know, all the wholeness of that. It helps me to evaluate, assess, and then to dig a little bit deeper. Um, I like talking about the first kiss, like what happened. How did you respond? Well, you know, in the engagement story, it's not just how the person got on their knee and said the words, "Will you marry me?" It's what was happening in the person's mind as they were building up to those moments, why those feelings were happening, and then what did you experience the expression of the person you were asking that to, and how did they react? And then I asked the person what was going on in their head, and so it's just this constant dance, and and getting every single bit of the details so that I mean I get a lot of details, so I only tell like that much of it, but I get the best part of that much so I can say the most explosive sentence with the most detail, with the most that it emotes so much feeling for the couple and for the guest experiencing that. All of that, I think. But I have to give props to my psychotherapy training. It's just I highly recommend being a storyteller and a psychotherapist because you can do a lot with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, with like all the different reality television shows that we see, I mean, all of it is about the backstory. I mean, you can't even get cast for shows like that unless you have a really compelling backstory that they can leverage and continue to build upon that. Is I mean, it's just so the storytelling aspect is really really incredible, and also, I mean, as a founder of a business, I mean, it's just your story is very unique, and you need to gain the confidence and own that story and use it to your not advantage, but I mean that's what's building your business.
Yeah, yeah. I think storytelling is just important in all aspects of life, and I think even I mean with my pest control company, for example, I think storytelling is important in there too. It's not just business as usual. There's human beings interacting with other human beings and how to make those interactions the best interactions possible. And then the follow up thereafter. Like, did you have a good experience with me? And if not, what could I do better? Or if so, what did I do good? You know, all of that is important. And I think often in business we miss the human component of things, and it it just I think we swing and miss a lot too much.
If you go to a restaurant and the manager comes by and says, "Hey, how was your meal?" I think the majority of people, whether their meal was great or not, say it was good. Right. The same thing is kind of what you were just saying, where after you work with clients in either of the businesses, you ask them that question. Most of them, it seems like, don't provide enough detail into an answer that you can really do something with. Either they ignore it or they just click a number and there's no real context behind it. Is there anything that you've done to get a deeper answer to something like for that, so that you can really understand it? Because I would hope that the person at the restaurant that you just told that the meal was fine, when the burger was overcooked, the fries were terrible, the service, whatever, you know, if that happens in your business, you want to know about that, right? But if the person who's the customer doesn't tell that answer, you can't do anything with it. So is there anything that you've done to remedy that problem?
I don't know if it's something that I've done. I don't do anything specific to that point, but I do when I ask the question about my care service or whatever. I tell them that my human part of it is that, you know, the biggest compliment and tip that you can give me is the opportunity to say something back about my work, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. That's important to me. So I'm often surprised to see how someone has experienced it when I put the shade of or the lens of humanity of how that's going to impact me, um, and what they say thereafter. So I just kind of let it go to the wilds and see. I have two really, really, really incredibly bad reviews that were very humbling to me, but I wear them as a badge of honor with my gazillions of other positive reviews. But it's something that I can take home and evaluate and process.
Yeah, well, I bet when you wore plaid to a wedding that you weren't supposed to, that was probably the one that reviewed you terribly. So,
Oh, it wasn't. But they didn't comment about my clothing. I'm sure if I gave them the opportunity, they might.
So something that Gary Plagg, who knows if I pronounce his last name correct, Plague, you may know him. You probably do know him, right?
Mm-hmm.
He explained this to me. He said, when you want feedback, offer, or you're going to provide feedback to someone, make sure you're in the right mindset, right? Make sure that you are accepting of that information. Or if you're going to provide someone feedback, say something like, do you want feedback? And that's an open door to get it, to get that information from you. Is that something that, and I say that because you're asking for that information, right? And those 2 bad reviews were humbling and stuff like that. But is it something that you had to work with yourself personally to figure out, like, yo, like, this is not, I don't know why I've said yo a lot today too. I feel like I don't normally speak like that, but whatever. Is that something that you had to work on yourself, or you're fine with it? Like, how do you take the feedback, positive and negative?
Well, I think initially when I got those 2 bad ones, I mean, I wanted to call my lawyer and do a cease and desist or sue them. But
Wow.
right around that time, I'm very honest. But right around that time, I met with a couple and they said, we thought your reviews were staged or fake until we saw those 2 bad reviews, and now they're just real, and we think you're real. So we hired you because you had 2 bad reviews. And it just changed my perspective, because it's like, people have bad days sometimes, and we can either deny the badness or reject it, or we can accept it. And when we accept it, I think it's coming to a place of understanding the perception of the person that's writing or feeling those things, because their perception is still real whether I agree with it or not. And so that, I think that's the most important part. If someone feels a certain way about a certain thing, it's important to that person, and I have to hear it, acknowledge it. I don't have to agree with it, but at least I can hear it and acknowledge it. And there might be some truth a part of it, and I can follow through and see what I needed to learn from that. So,
are you a networker? I mean, you know a lot of people. You've officiated, 10,000 weddings, 6,000. I'm listening, I promise. Do you find yourself as a good networker? Do you it seems like you've positioned yourself well in that case, but I mean, do you still get out there? And I mean, I know you and Tim are in the same Rotary together. I think I heard that. Like, are you a networker?
So I used to say I was a master networker back in the day. So I was at everything. I'd pass out my card to everything. My goal, I'd work the room, if you will. I would have their card, they would have my card. I think older in life, I've done a little bit less than that, because as much as I work, I still hear and feel the introvert part of me that just screams inside. So I went to a networking event that's just launching. What was it, on Tuesday? It's Darling and Friends. Darling is a hair beauty person, and she's starting her own kind of like BNI thing. And I'm not a fan of BNI per se. But I came in, I sat, and I talked to everybody. And then at the end, everyone's networking, but I just kind of sit in my chair. People come up to me, and we just listened, and I talked. So networking is important. I think if I was to tell a young entrepreneur where to start, I think it's writing your dream down, sharing it to everybody that you possibly can, and then talking about it. But then there's a part in life where you've arrived and you're tired and you don't want any more business. You just want to sit down and just chill and drink some wine.
Okay, so this is interesting. Okay, so you just said that you storytell for other people. It's not about you. But then from a networking perspective, it was the complete opposite. It was give my business card to everyone, tell people my goals, et cetera, et cetera. What's the difference in that swing?
Well, there's not much different. It's my story still when I'm networking.
But it's your story, not the other people's story. So it doesn't matter. Like so when you're officiating a wedding, it's not about you. You said it's about the people that you're bringing together. So when you're networking, though, it sounds like it's the flip flop of that. When you're trying to get your story out there, where before it wasn't about you, it's now about you.
Yeah.
I
don't know. I think the human components of my own story is important in that sense. And I think it's when you're talking about your business, it's not just why should I hire you, but why should I like you enough to give you my money? You know what I mean? And I think the why of liking you is important. And so if I share my story, it gives you that why and like, and that's why people hire me. Some people have no idea the type of service or work or storytelling that I do, but they like me as a human. So they're like, here's my $500. Can you be a part of my most special day of my life?
Yeah, just Venmo me. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a wedding. Just straight up, just give me $500.
Yeah.
You can guess what my Venmo is and send me the money.
That sounds good.
I'm curious, Cory, have you, in terms of your dreams, have you achieved your dreams, or what do you still have left to accomplish? Are you?
So, I think my parents have given me a lot of opportunity to do all the things that I've wanted to do. So I've done just about everything I'm in my fourth career now. I'm a good millennial. We change every 3 or 4 years. And I've been doing this hard since 2014. So I am ready for a change. I am set up to start in the United States Air Force Chaplain Corps. And people laugh and they say, well, you're going to retire to the Air Force? Absolutely. I don't have to travel. I don't have to have an assistant to drive me. I don't have to do all the night and weekend work. I hired one of my wedding planners recently, about a year ago, for my pest control company. She doesn't get paid as much as she did, but she said, Cory, for the first time in 20 years, I've had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. And it's changed her entire life and her relationship that she just got married to. So, that's the type of wholeness that I think I'm seeking, like to be less on the move because my hustle has been so strong. I've been working really hard and diligent on credentials, like the psychotherapy work and the board certified chaplain things. And I have 2 master's degrees and all that. So, I've done the hustle and I've done all the credentialing, and now I'm just ready to have a 9 to 5 and do counseling. 20 years ago, I would have told you I would have been a lawyer, straight, married, 2.5 kids, and a white picket fence. I'm married to a man with a white picket fence with 2 dogs. One just died. I get paid as much as a lawyer now, and I am happy. So I'm constantly looking forward, never staying where I'm at. Even as the #1 wedding pastor in the Commonwealth, I'm constantly seeing how many more weddings can I do? How many more people can I set up? So when I leave, I'll still have a money stream set up because my name, my brand will still be present, but I will go to all of my associates. And so we'll all make money in that sense. So it's while I go bask in the United States Air Force all over the world.
It's interesting that you put that way. It reminds me of when I worked in TV news and I had to work a bunch of holidays, and it's kind of like nights and weekends for you. It's just, you don't think about all of the time that's necessary to go into something like that. And it's cool that you recognize that and are going to do something different, but still have some meaning behind it.
Yeah. I go on vacation a lot because I need the mind break from all the hustle that I do. Maybe every 3 to 4 months, I'm somewhere, spending some time. But I see all these older couples, these couples in their 60s, 70s, 80s, who are enjoying for the first time a retired life. I mean, they might be massively rich and able to live in Aruba or wherever for like 6 months out of the year. But they spend an entire life in jail working for that. So I'm at a place where I just want to live and love life so much. I think that's why I like you and and your Mrs. Ryan, sir, because you too, I see you all these living your life so well, and with concerts and travel, and it's inspiring, and it's just something that I think is important for all people to find.
Well, thanks, Cory.
Yeah.
It's
He's blushing. I can see it. Like
with the well, I mean, it's one of those things, though, in the sense of, I appreciate the saying that it's an inspiration, because we live it's such a crazy world out there where people are so quick to throw shade on somebody, and we never want to come across as bragging or anything. It's just like, we're living a happy life. We want to share that happiness with people, and we hope that everyone enjoys it as much as we do, and we enjoy everyone else's vacation pictures as much as they do as well. And it just we never it's just always it's interesting, the world that we live in. That said, Cory, have you had the opportunity to do any destination weddings, and if so, where is the coolest place that you were able to do one?
Some kind of expensive, so people won't often bring me with them. They usually see me before they go to their destination, because they don't want the Mexican needle in their arm or whatever. I flew out to Cape Cod in June. That was kind of fun. I've never been to Cape Cod. It's a different world up there. Seafood's a lot different up there too. I had a lot of fun. I was in Florida, like Naples area, and at the New Year. So that's kind of fun too. I think I was in Myrtle Beach once. So quick drives, quick flights, those types of places.
There's the website. So if you have a bucket list, for those that are watching, there's the website on the screen. So if you have a bucket list destination wedding, then where is it? And people can go to this site and book you.
Absolutely. I want to go to, I love the Caribbean. So I haven't been to, what's the island that's straight out from Virginia?
Bermuda.
Bermuda. I've never been to Bermuda.
It's an interesting place. So people don't realize this. Whatever the weather is in Virginia is the weather that it is there. So you need to go
in the summer,
or else you'll be freezing, because it's in the middle of the Atlantic.
I feel like you learned this a different way, huh?
No. I've only gone in warm times, I guess.
Okay.
Summer or fall, probably. But it's definitely a place where you gotta strategically. You gotta also worry about the fall because of hurricanes. So, and I think they get more hurricanes than us, because I guess a lot of them that just turn
go out that way.
So.
Yeah.
Well, Cory, what's something we haven't talked about today that you normally talk about or want to talk about?
We can talk about my pest control company, or young entrepreneurship. I don't know. I don't know. I'm good. I think we talked about enough.
I mean, one thing, we had a guest who had a pest control company probably a year or so ago, and we asked him what the biggest horror story that he had. It wasn't exactly like they had like 27 garbage bags of pests that they had to haul out of this
insects. Yeah. That was the day he realized he wanted to do it the rest of his life.
Well, that's quite the story. I think every single not secretly, I'm the leading expert on bed bugs and roaches for Hampton Roads. I learned one of my best friends is the world leading expert, so we travel a lot together. And so being that I'm the cockroach whisperer or the bed bug whisperer, so I get to see some of the dirtiest things. And when things are falling in my head and I'm wondering, I'm like, I have too many master's degrees for this. I don't want this life of bugs in my hair, or when I get home, the paranoia, did I bring home the bed bugs or whatnot. So, but I think the worst story I had, a whole community contacted a news channel and they asked for some help, and there wasn't really much help for them. So I taught this community how to get rid of the rats that was breeding in this vacant abandoned home. But the worst part of it was the city didn't want to help at all. They actually called me to complain that we're killing all these rats now, and now I need to pick them up. I said, this was your issue to begin with. And I put my dollars and donated to fix this for the
What city?
Newport News. And wow. on the phone with the city manager, the Peninsula Health Director, and someone else. And I forget
Hashtag rat life.
Yeah. And literally were arguing with me about this. And I'm like, this is your issue, but don't worry. I will go around the 75 neighbors and teach them how to bag their own rats that are dead on their property. And then you guys can live happily ever after. And that's how we resolved that.
I have a mouse story. I have a mouse story, but I killed that myself. I named it, my wife named it Templeton. And that was about 5 years ago. And we lived in a building at that time. And it would somehow get through because there was a crawl space, I guess. So they would live there and then they would come through. And I kept noticing that the dog food was in like this plastic container. And there would be like these, no mouse in there, but I would see that it had gotten open. And I was like, okay, well, this is weird. Well, finally, actually Christmas morning, Templeton decided to come out and I had a broom. And let's just say Templeton didn't make it to the day after Christmas. And I was a big son of a rat. So, yeah, it was I feel bad for that community, for all of them in Newport News, but Templeton.
They're rat free. I like your story about Templeton. I just feel bad because I love the character of Templeton in that movie.
So is he from a movie? Maybe that's where my wife came up with the name.
Yeah, I think it's Charlotte's Web, maybe. So
I'm gonna look that up. Cory, it's been great. Appreciate you being here today, and continued success. And we'll chat soon.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Cory. It's great.